Today, Matt Walsh Show, the left is outraged at me because I dared to suggest that a pro-amnesty Republican politician is not a real American, which raises what will be the new central question for our culture. What is an American? We'll discuss. Also, the White House doubled down on its claims that the Obama administration concocted a treasonous conspiracy to undermine the will of the voters in 2016. And a very popular new app exists solely to give women a forum to spread gossip about men they don't like. Plus, a major construction site in Nashville is shut down after someone finds a noose on the premises, supposedly. The epidemic of invisible nooses on construction sites is still apparently ongoing. We'll talk about all that and more today on the Matt Walsh Show. A couple of months ago, Vandy Crisps started advertising on the show, and honestly, I was hooked right away. This chip has only 3 ingredients, but it tastes better than all the chips you're getting at the store. And those aren't really chips. They're more of a chip-like substance made from a chemical cocktail. Vandy Crisps are just chips, real, honest-to-God potato chips made the way they used to be made, the way God intended, before the food industry got hijacked by scientists feeding us their latest experiment. Heirloom potatoes, sea salt, 100%, grass-fed beef tallow. That's it. That's the whole ingredient list. And the tallow isn't some gimmick. It's what the chips were cooked in for decades. In fact, Vandy didn't reinvent the wheel. They just went back to the version that worked before corporations turned us into guinea pigs. Look, you shouldn't have to feel anxious about a snack. You shouldn't have to cross-check labels like you're scanning for radiation. What you want is something that tastes amazing, doesn't wreck your body, and is safe to hand to your kids without wondering what it's doing to their hormones and all the rest of it. And that is Vandy. Ready to give Vandy a try? You really should. These chips are the best chips I've ever had. And I will say that. I will put my name on that claim. Ready to give Vandy a try? Well, go to vandycrisps.com/Walsh and use code Walsh for 25% off your first order. That's vandycrisps.com/Walsh and code Walsh for 25% off your first order. As a general rule, it's worth paying attention whenever the big Soros-backed mouthpieces for the Democrat Party go out of their way to defend Republicans. Doesn't happen very often, and it never happens by accident. If nothing else, Democrats are extremely precise and coordinated with their messaging. So I couldn't help but notice when earlier this week, the left-wing outfit Media Matters, which is somehow still operational, I also discovered, decided to go all in on defending Florida Republican Congresswoman Maria Salazar. In case you missed it earlier this week, we discussed Salazar's new plan to award amnesty to tens of millions of illegal aliens living in the United States. Salazar doesn't call the bill amnesty, but that's exactly what it is. The point is to grant legal status to foreigners who have no right to be in this country in the first place, all of whom are therefore criminals. They broke the law coming here. And by her own admission, Salazar intends the legislation to enable a future path to citizenship for these foreign nationals and their families. The idea is that she's going to have a bill that keeps them all here, and then someone else will come in and grant them citizenship. Foreigners from places like Cuba, that is where Salazar's parents were born, are understandably thrilled by this legislation, but Americans understand that, like so many other similar amnesty proposals from Washington in the past few decades, this is yet another attempt to undermine American sovereignty and to facilitate the invasion of our country. When Salazar stands up at the podium, speaking a foreign language as she lectures Americans about how shameful we are, the appropriate response is exactly what I said the other day. Maria Salazar should leave the country. She doesn't believe the United States has borders, which means she doesn't believe we're a real country. She's trying to undermine our sovereignty. She has open contempt for American citizens as she works on overtime on behalf of foreigners. So the most logical outcome would be for Maria Salazar to book a one-way ticket to Cuba and leave the rest of us alone. Now, when I made this argument, the Soros lapdogs at Media Matters immediately leapt into action. Yes, they defended a Republican because their allegiance is to the open borders agenda, not to any particular political party. And here's what they said, quote, DailyWire's Matt Walsh says Representative Maria Elvira Salazar is not American and should go back to Cuba. She was born in Miami. Representative Salazar's website notes that she was born in Miami's Little Havana neighborhood, the daughter of Cuban exiles. Therefore, Representative Salazar is an American, close quote. It's always the most unassuming matter-of-fact statements from the left that end up being the most revealing. just this one paragraph of Media Matters is a remarkable window into how they see the world. Salazar's website says she was born in Miami, therefore she's an American, is what they say. That's how they think. Doesn't matter whether Salazar is loyal to America. It doesn't even matter if she sees herself as an American. All that matters is where she was born. Simply by virtue of her birth, we're told she's an American. But that's not true. I mean, you could certainly make the case that Salazar is a legal citizen of the United States of America under the Constitution of the United States if you subscribe to the idea of birthright citizenship. That's a legal classification, fairly well defined at this point. But I wasn't talking about citizenship precisely, so that's a moot point. I didn't say that Salazar isn't a citizen legally. I didn't say she's an illegal immigrant. I said she's not an American. And that's not a question that's settled simply by legal documentation. If it was, then you could, as Salazar ultimately wishes to do, wave your magic wand and grant legal citizenship, quote unquote, to millions of non-English speaking foreigners, many of whom just got here about 10 seconds ago, and magically turn them all not just into legal citizens, but also into Americans who are just as American as you or me. But you can't do that. The suggestion, is that a guy from Guatemala who hopped off the boat last Tuesday, can't speak a lick of English, doesn't care about this country, doesn't know anything about it, isn't loyal to it, but is handed citizenship anyway, is somehow still as American as apple pie. And that's absurd. I mean, it's just wrong. And we all know it. In 1782, the French diplomat Jean de Crèvecoeur published his Letters from an American Farmer, and there were 12 letters in all. He wrote them as he sought to understand the meaning of the new American identity after he married an American woman and settled down on a farm in New York. In fact, he explicitly asked the question, what then is the American, this new man? In the letters, he described Americans as, quote, descendants of Europeans who could prosper if they were honest, sober, and industrious. He wrote that Americans were a people characterized by their rejection of European hierarchies and a strong belief in individual advancement. Now, what he didn't write, because it would have been absurd, is that an American was merely nothing more than someone who managed to get a piece of paper announcing that he's a citizen of the United States. Even less did he say that an American is anyone who happens to be living within the borders of the United States, which is the definition that Salazar and her anti-American compatriots in Congress and all across the left seem to be going with. More than a century later, after he served as president, Teddy Roosevelt declared that so-called hyphenated Americans, meaning Americans with dual loyalties, were not actual Americans at all. Here's the New York Times article documenting Roosevelt's remarks at the time. Headline, quote, Roosevelt bars the hyphenated. No room in this country for dual nationality, he tells Knights of Columbus. Treason to vote as such. The article begins, quote, Colonel Theodore Roosevelt, speaking at the Columbus Day celebration at Carnegie Hall last night, gave full vent to his feeling about hyphenated Americanism and preparedness for war. The colonel told of his convictions, scored as traitors those who were not wholeheartedly for their country first, last, and all the time, and offered his suggestions for the Americanization of those who come to the United States as immigrants. The foreign population, Roosevelt said, must be an American population, and Americanism was a matter of the spirit and the soul. There is no place here for the hyphenated American, he said. The sooner he returns to the country of his allegiance, the better. And Roosevelt went on to state that it was important to secure, quote, 3 elemental things. 1, a common language. 2, the increase in our social loyalty. Citizenship, absolutely undivided, a citizenship which acknowledges no flag except the flag of the United States, and which emphatically repudiates all duality of intention or national loyalty. And 3rd, an intelligent and resolute effort for the removal of industrial and social unrest, an effort which shall aim equally at securing every man his rights and to make every man understand that unless he in good faith performs his duties, he is not entitled to any rights at all. Now, it's worth revisiting all this language from the founding of this country and again from Teddy Roosevelt more than a century later, because it underscores a very fundamental and longstanding point. The American identity is not simply about a piece of paper or what geographic place you were born in or where you happen to be standing at this present moment. It's about your loyalty to this country, your ability to speak our language and to relate to us and our way of life. It's about your compatibility with our culture and our history and our society and our founding principles. If you lack compatibility and if you're disloyal, if you prioritize other nations above our own, then you're not an American at all. That's why we had the House Un-American Activities Committee. If you're not on our side, then you're a traitor. And in the words of Roosevelt, you deserve no rights at all. And you certainly don't deserve the courtesy of being called an American. It shouldn't really be a controversial point as much as Media Matters would like to pretend otherwise. Ironically, Salazar herself made this argument for me. Watch this clip carefully. Listen.
President Trump, sir, the same God who saved you from death in Pennsylvania 1 year ago and who put you back in the Oval Office against all odds is the same God Almighty who millions and millions are begging to for some type of dignity, not amnesty. Sir, I believe that you could be for immigration what Lincoln was for slavery and Reagan was for communism. You are a businessman who understands our economy needs a reliable working force in areas where other Americans don't participate.
Now, did you catch that? She said what open borders advocates say all the time. She said, quote, our economy needs a reliable working force in areas where other Americans don't participate. In other words, according to Maria Salazar, illegal aliens who don't even have the documentation, right, are Americans. They are, in fact, they're Americans and the rest of us are other Americans. Now, they aren't citizens, as she admits, right? These people are not citizens. Talking about illegal aliens, they're not citizens. But according to Maria Salazar, they still count as Americans. And therefore, by Maria Salazar's own logic, the concept of being an American is indeed distinguishable from being a legal citizen. They're not the same thing. In fact, everybody on the left believes this. That you could be an American without the documentation. Which means that the documentation does not confer on you the status of being an American. That's what they believe. So what exactly does it mean to be an American? Maria Salazar has never answered this question, and you can see why. I mean, by any reasonable definition, very few of the foreign nationals that Salazar is speaking up for would qualify as American. I mean, think about it this way. Imagine a scenario, very common scenario, where someone comes here from, let's say, an African country, joins an African conclave where they speak an African language and maintain their African culture while fighting for African interests. In this scenario, even if they happen to be in Ohio while they're doing it, are they American? Are they? I mean, would you really say with a straight face that a hypothetical refugee named Omar Mohammed Abdullah, who can't speak a word of English, who steals hundreds of thousands of dollars a year by scamming federal programs with his father's fraudulent shell company, and who sends most of his money back to family members in Somalia, and who celebrates Somali Independence Day instead of July 4th, is really an American? Just like you and me? No, it just doesn't work. Intuitively, we know that that's a fraud. And of course, this isn't really a hypothetical. You could just take a look at Minnesota, as we've done a few times this week. Well over 100,000 Somalis live in Minnesota. They have not enriched the state in any way. They haven't brought newfound prosperity or major technological innovation or anything like that. Instead, they've innovated in only one area, which is finding new ways to defraud the U.S. taxpayer. In fact, it's not just the Somalis in Minnesota who are doing this. It's a nationwide problem. The other day, I received an email from someone identifying himself as a police officer near Columbus, Ohio. And here's what he wrote, quote, Somalis have taken over most of the gangs in this area. It's very hard to track them because they all have the same names and dates of birth. Mohammed, birthday January 1st, 1995, or whatever year. I know of one case where a 4-year-old girl was shot in a drive-by shooting into a house, and their Somali parents said it was Allah's will and refused to cooperate with police. It's absolutely insane. Yes, they need to be deported. It needs to end. Meanwhile, in Maine, a legislator named Decca Dalak just gave a televised interview in which she declared that this is a quote-unquote American lawmaker who declared that her goal was to help, quote, our country of Somalia, before she quickly corrected herself. Watch.
Policies, how can the politics in Somalia can be, resonate what we have here in the United States, the democracy that we have. How can you help us, be a better country and build back what we used to have back in long time ago? So hopefully we will be able to help our country, our former country, Somalia.
Now, as Aaron McIntyre has pointed out, it feels almost intentionally degrading. These foreign scam artists can barely even speak our language to the point that they accidentally admit they're working on behalf of foreign interests. It's all very overt. By the way, is that an American? Doesn't speak our language, dressed in the typical Muslim, traditional Muslim attire, announcing that her country is Somalia, working on behalf of the interests of Somalis. Do I have to accept that she's just as American as me? Really? I have to just accept that? Is it racist to point out what we all recognize as true, that there's a very clear distinction? And by the way, this is typically how scam artists work. They very often brag about their heists right out in the open because they're not very smart and they can't believe they're getting away with it. And more importantly, they know that no one's going to investigate them. Here's another apparent scam that Somalis are running. This is from a recent post from a Somali in Minnesota, reportedly. Watch.
Another crazy statistics, just in Minnesota, not anywhere in the world. I can just imagine the statistic in the world. Just within the metro area of Minnesota, there's about 30,000 single Somali mothers, single mothers, which is a ridiculous number. But at the same...
So cute. A lot of you, man, will think this is a true statistic, but it's not a real statistic because the single mothers that's registered in the government, they're not actually single mother. Nin bay haystaan, laakiin dowladda waxay sheegayaan, oh, anigu single baan ahay, nin ma haysto, what do you call it? I need a support. So this is spousal support, man. Like, this is a hustle. A lot of Somali hoyas do is to get benefits. You understand?
Several residents in Minnesota have replied to this video to confirm that, indeed, this kind of thing is happening all the time. Thousands of Somalis are claiming to be single mothers so that they can fraudulently obtain government benefits. And it's not just limited to Somalis. Here's one representative post, for example, quote, "This is all foreigners. I used to work at a hospital. Arabic women would come in, claim to be single, get free health care and anything else they could get because they put single on the paperwork. Then we would watch them walk out to their expensive cars because their husband owned 3 corner stores and a gas station. These same stores are stocked using food stamps. They go into stores that are having deals like 1 2-liter Pepsi for $1.50. They bring 10 family members to buy as much product as possible because stores have limits per person. They pay with food stamps and then take the items to their stores and sell it." Here's another reply. This is one's from Jason Robertson, the co-founder of the American Tribune. Quote, "I'm from Minnesota, can confirm the system is set up so that single moms get more money than married families, so they stay single. In some cases, they even do a religious ceremony without filing the paperwork to make themselves legally married. To be fair, this isn't only the Somali community." Close quote. Now, Democrats understand that importing all these foreign scam artists is destroying the United States, but they're fine with it because all the foreign nationals living in this country, even the illegal ones, count for redistricting, meaning they give Democrats more seats in Congress. And one New York lawmaker, a very dumb woman named Yvette Clark, was careless enough to admit this publicly the other day. Listen.
I'm from Brooklyn, New York. We have a diaspora that can absorb a significant number of these migrants. And when I hear colleagues talk about, the doors of the inn being closed, no room in the inn, I'm saying, I need more people in my district, but just for redistricting purposes. And those members could clearly fit here.
Well, talk about saying the quiet part out loud. If there's any redeeming quality that these people have, it's that they're so stupid they can't help themselves. They're compelled to admit everything that they're planning. When leftists like Yvette Clark and Maria Salazar tell you that illegal aliens are really Americans, this clip tells you why they're saying that. They want to build a coalition of voters that will benefit them politically. They understand very well that none of them are really Americans, just like I wouldn't be Japanese if I somehow parachuted into Tokyo tomorrow, filled out some documentation, and gained legal status. Okay, that would make me a legal resident of the country. But it would be a grave error on behalf of Tokyo's government to allow that, one which would never actually happen in real life. But regardless, it wouldn't make me as Japanese as someone who's lived in the country their entire life, who speaks the language, respects the culture, has ancestral ties to the country and its history. And we all know that. We know that for every other country outside of the Western world, that is. And for most of this country's history, this wouldn't be a controversial point. But suddenly we're expected to believe that only a bigot, only a far-right white supremacist would dare to say that being an American actually means something. Only the most racist person imaginable would believe that Americans have a shared culture, a shared language, a shared loyalty. That's the message they're trying to send. They're trying to tell us that we're racist for wanting America, wanting this country to have any identity at all. That every other country on earth is allowed to have an identity, allowed to have a shared culture, a shared language, a shared identity, but we're not. We're not allowed to have that. It's a basic desire and need for all civilized people who form countries. This is why you do it. And everyone else is allowed to have it. We're not. How dare you even suggest such a thing? Well, at the risk of angering all these very low IQ and emotionally incontinent subversives, I'm not going to go along with it. No one should. What is a woman was once the big question of the day. It's a question that always had an obvious answer, even if the left pretended otherwise. So perhaps we have a new question, one that's also pretty simple, even if the left claims to be totally vexed by it. And that question is simply, what is an American? Really, what is it? What does it mean to be an American? Ask your local representative that question. Ask every politician that question. Think about it yourself. In the next few years, that question, as it was when Teddy Roosevelt delivered that speech to the Knights of Columbus, will prove to be very important. It'll be the question that defines this country and whether it survives. We should all be able to answer it. And to banish anyone who can answer it, especially any politician, as far away from this country as we possibly can. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Have you ever wondered why elite athletes, business moguls, and high performers are using Armra colostrum? It's because Armra colostrum packs over 400 natural nutrients that work at the cellular level to build muscle, speed recovery, and boost performance. No artificial stuff, just pure fuel for whatever you're tackling. Think of it as your body's natural defense system upgrade. It strengthens your immune system, and it does that throughout your entire body while supporting your gut wall system for better digestion, less bloating. Plus, it helps your body absorb nutrients more effectively and keeps your metabolism running smoothly. You'll also notice the difference in your skin's radiance thanks to natural antioxidants and collagen-boosting compounds. Plus, there's a reason elite athletes have been using colostrum for years. It enhances endurance and speeds up recovery so you can bounce back even faster. Bottom line, Armra colostrum gives your body comprehensive support to thrive naturally. We've worked out a special offer for my audience. Receive 30% off your first subscription order. Go to armra.com/Walsh or enter Walsh to get 30% off your first subscription order. That's armra.com/Walsh. Fox News reports Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard doubled down at a White House press briefing Wednesday, alleging the Obama administration promoted a contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election. There's irrefutable evidence that details how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. Gabbard said they knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't. Gabbard also said that declassified documents have been shared with the Department of Justice and the FBI so those agencies can evaluate if any criminal implications stemming from the materials are warranted. She said, we've referred and will continue to refer all of these documents to the DOJ and the FBI to investigate the criminal implications of this for the evidence. The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacturing of this intelligence assessment. There are multiple pieces of evidence and intelligence to confirm that fact. So the Trump administration is not backing away from this. They're leaning into it. They're doubling, tripling down. And that's good. And, I was thinking about this because the one bit of skepticism that I would have, and that I think a lot of people would have, is just this, that would Barack Obama really be dumb enough to involve himself in a conspiracy this explicitly, enough to make himself criminally liable? Which isn't to say, Obama would would never do something like this. Obama's too honest. No, it's not that. It's just, wouldn't Obama, who's a smart guy, wouldn't he be smart enough to give himself a buffer to keep his hands clean? Which again isn't to say he's actually innocent. Just that you'd think he's clever enough to preserve some amount of plausible deniability. That's the way these things normally work, I would imagine. And that reasoning makes sense if you don't remember the level of sheer panic that the establishment was experiencing back in 2016. And they're still panicked about Trump, of course, but not like they were when all this first started. They saw him as an existential threat in a way that nothing else in their lives ever had been. And he was. They were right. So they felt justified. They felt morally justified in doing whatever was necessary to stop him. And they also got sloppy. They were emotional and sloppy. So all that together makes some sense of the fact that Obama, usually a smart, scheming guy, would be brazen enough to involve himself so directly in this kind of conspiracy to the point where he makes himself criminally liable. So I think that's what happened there. So then now you have to follow through. And I'm not going to jump up on the soapbox again. I've made my point. We started the week talking about this. We need to put Barack Obama in handcuffs. That was the title of the show on Monday. So I made my point on that. But the more the Trump administration doubles down, the farther that they take this rhetorically, the more they box themselves into a corner where the only acceptable outcome is to actually arrest and prosecute some extremely powerful people. And they're in that corner right now. This is like they're officially in that corner. When you lean into it this heavily, you're doing press conferences, you've got Tulsi Gabbard, you've got the president himself coming out and making these accusations that I believe, once again. But when you do all of this, now you have to follow through. You have to. Anything less than very high profile arrests and prosecution will be a humiliation and a failure. Anything less runs the risk of destroying his presidency. Because you can't do this. You can't make these kinds of claims, make them so explicitly and relentlessly, and then do nothing. Because as I said on Monday, all that will mean is that you make all these claims and then you do nothing. That either means that you were lying about the claims and you were fraudulently accusing Obama of a criminal conspiracy, or it means that you were telling the truth, but now you're complicit after the fact because you refuse to do anything about it. And I don't think they're lying. So that would leave the latter option, which is if you don't do something about it, then you're complicit after the fact. So that's it. I every time there's another press conference about this, that's going to be my only response. And it looks like Tulsi Gabbard's doing everything. She's doing everything she can. She's doing everything the right way. She's laying out what she discovered. She referred it to the DOJ, right? She can't go make arrests herself. She can't go put handcuffs on Barack Obama herself. So she's doing what she can. But still, this is going to be my only response to this is like, okay, let's see it. Everything is lining up the right way right now. You're doing everything the right way right now. Let's keep that going. I wanted to mention this. Fox 2 in Detroit has this report. A new app called T, where women can only post photos of men they're dating to get input from other women, is causing controversy. The app was born out of some women's rough dating experiences, and it's called T as in spill the tea or gossip. It's getting popularity on TikTok, especially among Gen Z. There's a waiting list to join due to its popularity. One user, Emily, is anonymous on the app and admits she's embarrassed, saying she's a frequent user. Users can post photos of who they're dating to gauge other women's experiences with them, identifying so-called red and green flags. The reviews are rarely positive. She said, quote, if you get past the waiting list, you have to submit a pic of your face with an ID to prove you're a girl because no guys are allowed on the app. The guys that are green flags, I was trying to look them up on social media and like, oh, this is a good guy. So both ends of the spectrum are dictating my dating life right now. Emily says the T-app seems to be particularly popular in Middle Eastern communities, especially in Dearborn. All these guys are talking too. They're getting nervous. They're making TikToks about it, she said. Okay. So there's a lot of discussion about this on social media, especially on TikTok, as the article mentions. That's the app. It's got a lot of attention, a lot of videos on TikTok, many of them from men complaining about the fact that they've ended up on the app. Often they're being lied about, they say, and defamed. And I'm not going to play any of those videos here, but I watched a few of them. And you can go to TikTok and find the men who've had experiences who have found themselves on this app. And the only way that they can know that they're on it, I guess, is for a woman to tell them, because they can't even access the app. They can't access it. They can't defend themselves. They're not allowed on it to defend themselves or kind of give their side of the story or anything like that. So that's what the app is. The app is basically just women gossiping about men and usually tearing them apart and mocking them, insulting their appearance. I looked at some of these TikTok videos. That's what a lot of the comments, just women, a woman's dating a guy, posts his picture, says, hey, anyone know anything about this guy? And then you get a whole bunch of comments from women making fun of him, saying he looks like a creep, calling him ugly. I mean, it's really ugly stuff itself. And that's the whole thing. And this app exists supposedly to fill a need. And the need is that women have to warn each other about the quote unquote bad men who are out there. So let me say a few things about this. And first of all, this whole thing is terrible, obviously. It shouldn't be legal. Providing a forum specifically for people to just post whatever defamatory claims they want about other private individuals who themselves have no opportunity to speak up for themselves, complete with their names and their pictures and identifying information, that should not be legal. Now, sure, on any social media site, people can post defamatory stuff. It happens all the time. But the difference here is that this is an app specifically designed for that. It's designed to talk about other private individuals who, again, are barred from being able to say anything in their defense. So this should not be legal. I don't know how, I don't think it is, even by the current laws. And hopefully the men targeted by the app file lawsuits and sue everybody involved into bankruptcy. Sue the makers of the app and all these women participating. I want to just sue them all so that they're all bankrupt for life. That's what should happen. Because if you're a woman, I mean, shouldn't need to be said, but apparently it does for these women who are using it. Like, you shouldn't be doing this. This is bad. If you're on some app and you're just tearing apart men, for your own pleasure, then you're a bad person. Like, you're a bad, awful person. Gossiping is wrong. It is vile. It's disgusting. And women are the ones who do most of the gossiping. There's a reason this kind of app exists for women and not for men. A male gossip app like this couldn't exist. It'd be condemned by everybody, first of all. You wouldn't be able to, it literally couldn't exist. They wouldn't allow it in the app store. If there was if someone comes along with the T for men, you won't even be able to put it in the app store. They won't allow it. It'd be condemned even by the women who use this app, especially by them, actually. But also, men aren't interested in gossiping enough to keep an app like that going. This can only happen with women. Now, men can gossip also, but this is a sin that women are more inclined towards. It's kind of like, actually, like it is a sin that men and women can commit. Some women do watch. It's definitely something that appeals to men much more. It's a weakness that men are more likely to have. Men are much more visual, all these things. So that's why men will tend to struggle with that more than women will. And gossip is the same thing the other way. Gossip is basically female. It scratches the same kind of itch. Which is why sometimes, and look, I you know how I feel about the industry, about general. I think that it should be banned outright. All should be in prison for life. Like, that's what I think. So anyone who condemns, I agree. But, and this is a point that you hear men make a lot, which is true, that sometimes you'll have women who condemn, and it's sort of easy for them to do, but they're not looking at the things. It's like for most women, it's easy to, you're not going to fall. For most women are not going to fall into fiction. And it's easy for a woman to not fall into that because you're just wired differently. But there are things that are the female version of that, that we don't talk about as much. And I would say that something like this, gossip, it's this very base kind of pleasure. It's very savage, unseemly, where you're taking pleasure in ripping someone else apart. So you shouldn't be doing it. And also, if you feel like you need to be on an app like this, then you are the problem. I mean, if you find yourself constantly ending up with guys who are quote unquote red flags, so much that you need an app to weed them out, then you're the problem. Because that tells me, so when you hear from these women who say, oh, every guy I end up with is a weird creep. Every guy I end up with is why I need the T app, so I can finally steer clear of those kinds of guys. Well, if that's the case, that every guy you end up with is a weirdo creep, and that's why you need an app like this, that tells me that either you are yourself a weirdo creep, and that's why you attract those kinds of people, or the second option is that you constantly describe normal, nice guys as weirdo creeps because that's how you inevitably see everyone the moment they do something that displeases you. There's one of those two options. If you're a woman constantly ending up with weirdo creeps and these kinds of guys, red flags, then that's it. You're the problem. Either you are a red flag yourself, so you attract those kinds of people, or again, you have a tendency of labeling people like that just because they do something you don't like, or they have an opinion you don't like, or whatever. So, I would look at yourself on that. I've been meaning to play this clip as well. This is CBS News correspondent Scott MacFarlane recently. This is maybe a week ago or so, talking about the Trump assassination attempt in Butler last year and how devastating it was. And he wasn't talking about how devastating it was for the country, much less for Donald Trump, but how devastating it was for him personally. Not because he's a big Trump fan and he was afraid that Trump was going to get hurt, but for other reasons, which you'll hear him explain here. Listen.
For those of us there, it was such a horror because you saw an emerging America. And it wasn't the shooting, Chuck. I got diagnosed with PTSD within 48 hours. I got put on trauma leave, not because I think of the shooting, but because you saw it in the eyes, the reaction of the people. They were coming for us. If he didn't jump up with his fist, they were going to come kill us.
I know.
Just try to wrap your mind around the level of ego that's involved here. Right? The president got shot. Somebody in the audience was killed. And somehow Scott makes this all about himself. Scott finds a way that this is about him. A bullet whizzed by Donald Trump's head 2 inches from his brain. And Scott sees it as a near-death experience for himself, not for Trump. And not even because Scott thinks he could have been hit by a stray bullet or something, but because he imagines that if Trump had been killed, the audience would have descended on the media and killed them with their bare hands, in an act of vengeance. So this is extreme narcissism along with paranoid schizophrenia. That's basically what this is. And then he tells us that he had PTSD and had to be put on trauma leave. He says he was diagnosed with PTSD within 48 hours. Now, mind you, according to the DSM, you can't be diagnosed with PTSD until at least a month after a supposedly traumatic event. And there's a reason for that, because if something terrible happens and you're still upset about it 2 days later, that's not unusual. That's normal. That's why it's supposed to be at least a month. And the idea is, well, if you're still overcome with grief, if you're still not able to function a month later, well, now it's trauma. That's the diagnostic criteria. But somehow Scott allegedly gets a diagnosis anyway. And I don't doubt that he got a diagnosis, actually. I don't think he's lying about that part. Psychiatry is mostly fake and made up, and everything is arbitrary. I mean, everything, really, in psychiatry is the best thing you could say about it is it's arbitrary. Even that diagnostic criteria, well, it's got to be at least a month. Really? Why a month? Why not 2? Why not 6? Why not 2 days? Who says a month? Where do you come up with a month? So it's normal to be really upset up until a month, and then magically at that moment, it's not normal anymore. You have a disease or a disorder or whatever. So I don't doubt that he got a diagnosis, which is because anyone can be diagnosed with anything whenever they want to be. That's the thing. Anyone can go to a psychiatrist, get diagnosed with any mental illness they want to have, and you'll get it. That's the way it goes. And this is why I'm tired of everybody walking around claiming to be traumatized all the time. I mean, trauma can be a real thing. People can experience truly traumatic events. Unspeakably awful things can happen to people, which can leave a scar mentally and emotionally. Nobody denies that. But the problem is that now everyone's running around claiming to be traumatized by everything all the time. And it's just total nonsense. And not only is it nonsense, but as a man, it's shameful. Unless something truly horrific has happened to you personally. And the shooting in Butler was horrific. It was horrific for Trump. It was horrific for Corey's family. And for Corey himself, who was killed tragically. But it didn't happen to Scott. Like, this was not a horrific thing that happened to Scott. He was not the victim of the event. So unless something actually horrific has happened to you, you should be ashamed and embarrassed to whine about your trauma. Especially when Donald Trump himself has never even called the event traumatic. Donald Trump was the guy who got shot in the ear, and he has never used the word trauma to describe it. But it was traumatic for Scott McFarlane somehow, which is just humiliating. I mean, you should be totally humiliated as a man. I mean, in fact, even as a man, even if you have something traumatic happen to you, I mean, you should get some help and all of that. But even then, you don't want to walk around every day telling everyone that you have trauma, right? That's not the way to deal with that. And, but in particular, if you're someone like Scott McFarlane. I mean, if I had to be put on trauma leave, I would never tell a single soul. I would live the rest of my life in fear that anyone would ever find out about my trauma leave. If anybody brought it up, I would deny it. I would lie to their face and say it didn't happen. You would never hear me confirm that I was on trauma leave, particularly for a reason as ridiculous as this. But of course, this is the media, and they are narcissistic, which we see here. They're liars, which we see here. And they have no shame, which we also see exhibited in this story. So it's all happening there. Let's get to the comment section.
If you're a man, it's required that you grow a beard. Hey, we're the Sweet Baby Gang.
I want to give a big thanks to Bearskin for sponsoring today's show. They sent me this. This is their heavy storm rain jacket and hoodie combo. And after testing out, in fact, not just testing out, I wear this thing all the time. Only reason I'm not wearing it now, as I've said before when we've done this, that it's like 95 degrees inside this room that I'm sitting in. And I don't want to sweat all over my bearskin jacket, but this is, I can tell you, my favorite jacket. I wear it all the time. It folds down into its own stash pocket as well. It takes up almost no space in your backpack or pocket, and it's a total game changer in heavy or light rain, or really anytime. The thing is fully waterproof. That's because it's got fully taped seams, silicone sealed zips, adjustable cuffs, and the hood is designed to not allow any water near your face. And it's not just any old jacket. It's also got 5 waterproof pockets, so all your gear stays dry. Whether you're hiking, fishing is when I wear it very often, biking, getting caught in a storm on your morning commute, really anytime. That's when you need a jacket like this. And here's the best part. It actually zips into bearskin hoodie, turning both into a 3-in-1 all-weather system. So your fleece stays warm and dry underneath, and you stay comfortable and dry on the outside. Also, it looks great. Somehow, this jacket makes me look good. If it can do that for me, it can do. Think of the wonders it can do for you. When you order your bearskin rain jacket, you'll get fast delivery and free shipping from within the U.S. To get yours for 60% off, just text MATT to 36912. Even if you're busy right now, text MATT to 36912, and they'll send you a link so you can lock in your discount for later. So if you go outdoors, which I hope everyone does at least sometimes, rain or shine, don't miss out on this. Highly recommend it. Text MATT to 36912 and get 60% off the most badass rain jacket on the market. Got pulled over the other day for speeding, but didn't know it at the time. When the officer told me why I was being pulled over, I apologized and admitted I was not aware of the speed limit and just going with the speed of the traffic. After the cop did his thing, he let me go with a warning and to have a good day. Good things happen when you're polite and compliant. Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you're not belligerent and obnoxious. And that's why, as we talked about yesterday, I have no sympathy for many of these quote-unquote victims of quote-unquote police brutality that we hear about, because all that's required to avoid that kind of situation is to not be psychotically belligerent and obnoxious every step of the way. Just be a normal, polite person. Be vaguely reasonable. I mean, your life is so much easier. You'll live a much easier, happier life and be a much more successful person if you're just polite and reasonable. That it's like the bare minimum requirement. Let's see, for the millionth time, this shouldn't be adjudicated on the side of the road during a traffic stop, but I am opposed to laws nitpicking the out of people. All of this over no headlights on a cloudy day and no seatbelt. The laws are overreaching, excessive, and stupid. In New Hampshire, if you're over 18, a seatbelt or helmet is a choice, as it should be. There's zero good reason why cops should be smashing windows, punching people, dragging them out, and putting them under arrest over this nonsense. Not defending this idiot, but I think we're going to start to see a lot more of this when normal law-abiding people are constantly being harassed and hassled over BS while simultaneously being told things like illegal farmhands get a free pass. This is government overreach and needs to stop. Yeah, I basically agree with you. I don't like the nitpicking stuff. I don't like the petty laws about headlights during the day and seatbelts and stuff like that. I've never liked any of that stuff. Although the laws are as you're, I think, acknowledging, the laws are on the books, like it or not, and cops have the right and responsibility to enforce the law. If you don't like the law, then that's definitely not something that you argue with the cop over. Like, bring that to your state. That's not even something you argue in court over. Like, you don't argue against the law itself. You got to take that to your state government, your legislators. So yeah, I basically agree that with the laws themselves are often petty. Although I have to say, in recent years, I will say I've kind of started to see things a little bit differently. And part of me thinks that the nitpicking laws are sometimes good, not too many of them, but some of them, because it weeds out people like the guy we talked about yesterday, the people who can't or aren't willing to follow simple, basic rules. And that's good. Because there are kind of two different types of people. There are the people who get pulled over for a headlight thing, right? Something small. And they roll their eyes to themselves and they go, all right, fine, you got me, fair enough. Okay, yep, here you go, here's my license. And then they go about their day, right? And then you have the people who, when they get pulled over in that situation, they say, well, no, I'm not going to you can't I refuse, call your supervisor. And I kind of like the fact that these laws cause problems for that second group. I like that it weeds them out. Because they aren't, these are not rebels, right? These aren't people who refuse to bow to the man or whatever, who are taking a stand against. That's not what they're doing. That's not what they're doing. They're just dysfunctional, emotionally unstable, low IQ idiots who just can't follow the rules, don't want to follow the rules, think the rules apply to everybody else, right? Which is why they're not out like staging a protest against headlight laws in general. They only care the moment it affects them. That's all they have a very narrow concern about these laws. It's only how it affects them and inconveniences them. And their problem with it, again, is just that they don't think they should have to follow any rules. So this guy was William McNeil Jr., we talked about yesterday. This is a guy who thinks that he shouldn't have to follow any rules. That's it. It's not any more principled than that. It's just simply, I shouldn't have to follow any rules at all. I'm special. I shouldn't have to follow the rules. How dare you even try to make me follow them? And so, yeah, I kind of like the fact that we have some rules in place where that sort of weed those people out. That's another way of looking at it. I'm all for exercising your rights. If they ask for your permission to search, never consent. If they ask you where you're going, what you're doing, whatever, my standard response is, sir, I've identified myself and won't answer any other questions without an attorney present. But when told to move when they say and how they say, and you won't get your ass whooped. Yeah, that's fine if you want to do that. But I mean, personally, and I've heard this too, that when you get pulled over and the cops will ask, has any time I've been pulled over? I've been pulled over, I don't know, in my whole life, maybe 6 or 7 times. And, but whenever I have, you always get the question, where are you going? And I've always answered it because it's like, oh, I'm going to work, or I'm going, I don't know. I don't see the big deal in answering it. I don't know what bad could happen by unless you're going somewhere, unless you're like going to do a drug deal. But most of the time, just saying, oh, I'm running up to CVS down the road. It's like, I don't see how that can hurt you to answer that question. But, so I don't do this thing that people do when they get pulled over for like a minor speeding thing and they start playing lawyer on the side of the road. It's like, okay, but I've never done that. And it's fine. Like, it's fine. Just, they got you for speeding. It'll be fine. It really is okay. And pay the damn ticket, move on with your life. And that's it. Got a lot going on in my life. I don't have time to turn something like this into a Law and Order episode. I just don't. So, make life easier on yourself is my message there. All right, let's get to the daily cancellation. Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes that we're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. GCU equips you to serve others in ways that promote human flourishing and create a ripple effect of transformation for generations to come. By honoring your career calling, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself to glorify God. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 340 academic programs as of September 2024, GCU meets you where you are, provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. Normally, I don't go out of my way to offer financial advice to my audience. I'm not much of a stock picker. And unlike, say, the Somali community of Minneapolis, I certainly don't presume to have any great insight into any get-rich-quick schemes or anything like that. But in light of recent events, I have to make an exception to my general principle, or at least I have to make an exception to a very, very small percentage of my audience. This is a percentage that's so small that really it may not exist at all, if I'm being honest. But if anyone in this very, very specific subset of my audience happens to be listening at the moment, then this is your lucky day. So here we go. If you're one of the 1,400 people who happen to be working in construction at Nashville Nissan Stadium, the future home of the NFL's Tennessee Titans, then you currently have the opportunity of a lifetime to make a guaranteed $250,000, no questions asked. All you have to do is explain that you were doing your job in a completely normal fashion, and you will probably receive $250,000. That's it. There's no catch. Here's a local news station in Nashville to explain.
$250,000 is being offered to anyone who can give information about the person who hung a noose inside the new Nissan Stadium construction site.
Work is on pause as they investigate. Our Dryden Quigley has the latest details.
It's empty here at the Nissan Stadium construction site. That's because work is shut down while they investigate who is responsible for putting up a noose in the new stadium. This week, the Tennessee Builders Alliance, or TVA, said they discovered a noose somewhere on the construction site. They told us they immediately called police, stopped work, and are cooperating with the investigation. They're making counseling services available to all workers and requiring more anti-bias training. In a statement they wrote in part, "We are outraged and deeply saddened by this act. Racism and hate have no place here."
Well, they'll show you pictures of the fence. They'll show you close-ups of random cones and stop signs. The one thing they won't show you, strangely enough, if you noticed, is the noose. The entire purpose of the story and the $250,000 reward and the outrage, etc. That's the one thing you don't get to see, is the actual thing itself. And not only that, they won't even mention the possibility that, in fact, this noose might really be a standard slip knot for rope rigging, which has about 1 million reusable, reasonable uses on a construction site, including hoisting or dragging supplies. There's a lot you can do with a rope on a construction site. That doesn't even come up in this news report. You're just ordered to conclude that this invisible noose, which you're not allowed to see, has to be some kind of coded racist message, one that's so damaging that counseling is being offered to the construction workers. Yes, they've offered counseling and shut down the entire job site. I went through about a dozen articles and videos on this horrific incident. Not a single one actually showed a picture of the noose. Here's another one. This is a separate news channel in Nashville, to be clear. Watch.
Investigators say a noose was found at the new Nissan Stadium construction site. Now work on that site has been suspended, and Metro Police are investigating. Nashville Mayor Freddie O'Connell says the city has taken steps to prevent hate incidents like these.
Yes, it is very concerning. There is an open investigation. I know the Titans are cooperating with our Metro Nashville Police.
The Tennessee Builders Alliance, who is overseeing the stadium construction, released a statement about the incident. They say in part, quote, "We are outraged and deeply saddened by this act. We are working in close partnership with our client, trade partners, and unions to ensure every worker understands that racism and hate have no place here. Everyone deserves to feel safe, welcomed, and treated with respect and dignity."
That last part isn't even remotely true. Everyone doesn't deserve to feel that they're safe and welcome. It's actually the root of the problem. I mean, it'd be accurate to say that if a noose were in fact placed on the premises as part of an attempt to terrorize black people by some sort of time traveler from the 1920s who somehow wound up on the construction site of the new Tennessee Titans Stadium, then that would certainly be a noteworthy event for a local news report, I'll admit. But it's not accurate to say that black construction workers are entitled to feel that they're safe and welcomed at all times, no matter what. No one has that right. You are not entitled to have certain feelings. That is an unsustainable and absurd premise. And it leads to situations like this, where a construction site is shut down because of a piece of rope that no one's allowed to even see. Now, fortunately for everybody hoping that this construction will eventually finish, the workers were eventually allowed back on site, having received therapy for the trauma they endured. But at the same time, local civil rights organizations are still very angry about the whole situation. Watch.
Construction has resumed at the new Nissan Stadium after a noose was found last week, leading to a shutdown of operations there.
Our Jordan James has more on the decision and what's next.
For the first time since late last week, construction is back underway here at the new Nissan Stadium following a noose being discovered. Authorities continue to investigate how it ended up here. The company overseeing this project, Tennessee Builders Alliance, appears to have lifted the shutdown after vowing to focus on inclusion, respect, also requiring additional anti-bias training for workers. Meanwhile, the impact lingers beyond the stadium as local civil rights organizations demand more accountability.
I mean, you can't teach people how not to be racist. You can't teach people how not to come against other people that don't have the same agenda as yours. This stuff had to be grown and raised and birthed in you.
Well, okay, if that's the case, then we don't need anti-bias training at all. If you can't teach people how not to be racist and it has to be birthed in you, whatever that means, then there's really no point in shutting down the construction site for anti-bias training in the first place. So at least we've come to a point of consensus to some degree. Both the left and the right can agree that in every case, anti-bias training serves no purpose whatsoever. Therefore, the next time a noose is found at a construction site, the whole thing doesn't need to be shut down so that some DEI consultancy run by a Somali can get 6 figures worth of taxpayer money to tell everybody that racism is bad. That would be some level of progress, I guess. But an even larger degree of progress could be achieved if any of these construction companies or activists or media outlets took a step back and looked at the history of alleged nooses that have been found on construction sites. It's a very long and staggering list. And in every single case, the incidents are totally unproven and implausible and ridiculous, which makes you very strongly suspect that in every case, they're either completely normal pieces of rope that serve a vital purpose for the construction job, or they're a hoax placed there by an activist. In the modern history of this country, there is not a single confirmed case of a noose being placed at a construction site by some KKK member. In fact, I'm not aware of a single confirmed case of a noose being placed by some white racist anywhere at any point in the 21st century. These cases are always hoax. So let's run through some of these failed allegations as quickly and mercifully as we can. In August of 2017, the DCist reported, quote, after a series of nooses have been reported in D.C. and elsewhere in recent months, residents in Ivy City called D.C. police about what looked like a noose that was hanging from a construction site in the neighborhood on Wednesday morning. After investigating the situation, police determined that the construction crew was using the rope to move equipment. Metropolitan Police Department spokesperson Nikita Brown told DCist that the incident is not being investigated as a hate crime. Now, the story actually gets more amusing from there, so let's keep reading. Quote, people have been on high alert because the appearance of nooses is becoming a trend in D.C. When one was found hanging in an exhibit at the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture in June, the museum's founding director, Lonnie Bunch, said it has long represented a deplorable act of cowardice and depravity, a symbol of extreme violence for African Americans. Pariza Norouzi, who runs the nonprofit Empower DC that does advocacy work in the neighborhood, was on the scene when the first officer arrived, and she took issue with his attitude. He was extremely dismissive towards us, Norouzi says. We asked what is protocol for investigating a potential hate crime, and his immediate response is, why would you say this is a hate crime? He was very belligerent and condescending. It was really shocking to see, Norouzi said. Instead of securing the area, the officer just walked off, she said. Then a construction worker removed the purported noose that hung several feet in the air. It was taken down by the time other police officers arrived. Norouzi said that a Spanish-speaking construction worker told an officer that they use those all the time for guiding steel. Now, just in case you need a visual here, here's what Pariza Norouzi looks like. This person berated a police officer and a Spanish-speaking construction worker over a piece of rope that she suspected was a noose. And then instead of pretending to care about this woman's obvious mental health issues, they just walked away. And that's obviously the right approach in every situation like this. It's clear for everyone to see that this very overweight and unpleasant activist couldn't tell you a word about construction or about guiding steel. You know, she can't look at a construction site and say, oh, that shouldn't be here. She's got no clue what should be on a construction site and what shouldn't be. And you can't gain anything by humoring someone like this, so you just need to ignore them. But very few people actually do ignore people like this, and therefore, over the last few years, there have been a very large number of reported nooses at construction sites, and in every case, what do you know? No white supremacist culprit has been identified, even though there's been a very clear financial incentive for workers to report the alleged Klansmen in their midst. Here's NPR, quote, in April 2021, construction workers at an Amazon warehouse site in Connecticut were horrified when they found rope shaped like a noose hanging from the ceiling. The hate symbol was quickly reported to their bosses. 2 days later, 5 additional nooses appeared. The next month, 2 more discovered. Amazon, along with R.C. Anderson and a property developer, Scanel Properties, collectively offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to the identification of the culprits. And guess what? Despite a thorough investigation, a 6-figure reward, no suspects ever materialized. It was the perfect crime. Here's the Washington Post, which reported on yet more perfect crimes, all of which took place on construction sites, strangely enough. Quote, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, or their contractors, have all had nooses show up on major construction sites in recent years. Some incidents triggered work stoppages on projects employing hundreds, even thousands of workers. Can you imagine? Amazon, Facebook, Apple are all employing racist contractors. And all these racists, for whatever reason, express their racism in exactly the same way. They hang nooses at construction sites without being spotted by cameras, without being seen by witnesses. These are ninjas, essentially. And these ninjas will turn up anywhere. A few years ago, they turned up at the construction site of Obama's temple, otherwise known as his presidential library in Chicago. Watch.
A disturbing story now at 5. Construction at the Obama Presidential Center in Chicago had to be suspended after someone discovered a noose at the site yesterday. The Obama Foundation called it a shameless act of cowardice and hate. The construction company building the center says it has zero tolerance for any form of bias or hate. The company is offering a $100,000 reward to help find whoever is responsible.
So, of course, it's Bubba Wallace's garage all over again. Sure, there's no suspect, even though this was an extremely high-profile story with an immense amount of media and police interest. Sure, there's no picture of the noose. You just get stock footage of the construction site once again. But the important thing is that you recognize that construction workers are so racist that they feel no compunction whatsoever about hanging nooses on job sites to terrorize black people. Now, I could spend the next hour going through all the noose hoaxes on construction sites from the past few years. In fact, we did something like that relatively recently. So instead, I'll just make 2 obvious points here. The first is that it's fashionable to demonize construction workers because they're rare examples of productivity in a modern America. Angsty teenagers will identify as non-binary, transgender, or whatever, but they'll never identify as construction workers, and there's reason for that. People who actually create value in society are the single greatest enemy of the people in power. They are not dependent on handouts. They're not reliant on government to survive. They don't revel in self-pity or mental illness or weakness. Therefore, they have independence. As a result, they're the enemy. The media has no reservations whatsoever about smearing these people as cartoon racists without any evidence. And the other point that needs to be made here is that even if a noose was placed on a construction site by a card-carrying member of the KKK, which again has not happened, the response here is completely disproportionate and insane. You don't need counseling because of a piece of rope, no matter what shape that rope is in, and no matter who placed that rope. Multi-million-dollar construction projects don't need to be shut down because someone claims there's a noose. Huge awards don't need to be offered. A sane society can recognize bad conduct without melting down into hysterics over it. And a functioning society can move on productively in the face of inanimate objects that appear on construction sites. On the other hand, when you reward people for spotting fake nooses and devolve into panic and start offering $250,000 rewards, you simply encourage more fake reports of nooses by construction workers looking for a payday. And in many cases, as we've seen in several other contexts, alleged victims will hang the nooses all by themselves simply to garner sympathy or a quick payday. That's the rational response, really. You're giving people massive incentive to claim victimhood, and they'll happily do it, as demonstrated by the rash of nooses on construction sites and, many other places. The only way to end this cycle of self-pity and dysfunction is for self-described journalists to spend a day on a construction site so they can learn that rope is not, in fact, a weapon of mass destruction that was invented by white supremacists to terrorize construction sites. It would also be helpful to remove all the incentives for this kind of hysteria, starting with the huge rewards. But because the media is desperately trying to drum up another George Floyd narrative at the moment, it's likely that we won't see any of those reforms anytime soon. And that is why everyone who's pretending that a racist noose was just found at the construction site of the future home of the Tennessee Titans is today canceled. That'll do it for the show today and this week. Talk to you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Godspeed.
Today on The Ben Shapiro Show, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard declassifies a House Intelligence Committee report showing the Obama team doctored intel to conclude that Russia wanted Trump in 2016. Journalist Michael Tracy joins us to discuss what's actually in the Epstein files, and President Trump brings Columbia University to heel. That's today on The Ben Shapiro Show. Give it a listen.